Hey guys, I am on vacation on the beautiful coast of the hotel zone in Cancun. Just wanted to show you before we paint this awesome margarita that I'm traveling with my brushes in a cosmetic brush roller case. It was handmade by a woman on Etsy. You can get them in lots of different styles. You can also get a brush roller. I also brought my tiny palette of Daniel Smith paints and some small 3x3s to paint with. So let's make this margarita. You guys can choose whatever size. Let's do a simple oval for the top, a really flattened out oval. Then I want you to create a line down the center visually to separate it and create the symmetrical left and right. Quick bottom U, a stem coming down and branching into your bottom rim. Then let's do the lime hanging out over the top. Make sure it goes over the inside top of the glass. And I'm using a gum eraser, an art gum eraser to erase some of my darker lines so they don't show up strongly in the finished painting. So we're going to do a really fun background and just wet the whole. I'm using a number 6 brush right now. We're just wetting the whole background. We're like negatively painting water around the margarita glass, so that when we drop things in colors, that it will avoid the glass area. The paint will only go where we've put the water first. And I'm going to stick with blues in the background and some other fun colors, a little bit of a rose pink and maybe a little bit of this Naples yellow just to give it some fun. It's just going to be kind of fun. I'm keeping it mostly in blue. So I have a phthalo blue, which is a turquoise blue. You could mix up a little green blue or whatever blue you have and just drop it in places. I have cerulean and phthalo blue going here. Dropping it in, concentrating my paint around the outside. Corners, we're making it like a little silhouette effect, or here, keep going around the edge. And then you guys can see as it dries, it's going to be a lot lighter. It's kind of making a tie-dye effect. The word I was looking for a minute ago is vignette. We're looking for a vignette effect. Apparently I've had too many margaritas. Can't remember vocab. But just vignette effect, like darker around the edges. And then I'm using a little Naples yellow and a little Quin rose by Daniel Smith. If you have any kind of reds, it's going to mix in and make a little purpley tone, whatever you want. This is all about whatever you want in the background here, just for fun. And then I am going to go and get closer to the actual drawing here so that we're outlining it and it's ready to roll. So you can brush it around and get it inside here a little bit. And then see my like little bit lighter blues and stuff are around here. And then unfortunately I just cut into my glass. So the beautiful thing about watercolor is we can go ahead and get clean water on the brush and a dry paper towel and just get rid of it while it's still wet over here. I just put too much of the background color in my actual cup. And then same thing down here. I was really not being super careful. No big deal. Can't really worry about much when you're at the beach painting. Really. Okay, and so see how we kept kind of the little bit lighter around the glass and a little darker around the edges? It's all going to dry and look really, really cool. I really love this about watercolor that we're dyeing the fibers of the fabric, similar to doing a tie-dye shirt. It's just sucking up the pigment of the paint. I think that's really cool. Okay, to tackle it, I'm going to use a number 4 brush because I'm doing a 3x3, and I'm going to create a mostly lime green. You can do this by mixing whatever yellow you have with your blue and concentrate on just having more yellow than the blue. I also have a sap green, so I'm going to use that to darken my green mixture a little bit here and there. Right now I'm just using my limey green And this is wet on dry method we're going to do here. And what I want to do is outline my little wedges. We want to outline the wedges of the lime. We're going to keep a circular border and let's do 6 sort of pie shaped wedges, and just keep these are just little segments of the lime. This is just for fun. We're not going for hyper realism here, just fun though. I want it to be like a little bit obvious and fun, and this is good practice for some techniques of dropping colors into others. I just did a sea turtle following someone else's tutorial that really was amazing. The blends of the browns and the rich colors. And we're going to do that just in a tiny way here. I'm going to get a darker green. I have sap green, but you guys can use whatever you have. And I'm dropping it in to my already sort of wet lime green areas. And we're just going to let that blend around. I'm not using my brush to blend it. I'm using the water properties to just blend it. And then I'm drying my brush off so that this line here for the edge of the lime is pretty dry, almost like ink consistency of an ink pen, like a fountain pen. I'm dropping it in, and I want it to be just kind of like a felt tip pen consistency around the edge. And then let's take that same color that we had ready for the lime and add a little bit of yellow and just brush that across for the drink. And then when we get to the back of the cup, the top, don't forget to leave a little bit of white. The back right here, the back rim of the glass, just leave it white so it's not coming up all the way to the top. It looks more realistic. And then super fun, we're just gonna fill that in. We're doing wet on dry. And then fill in the bottom part of that glass, same color. It's looking good. The margarita flavors and colors here are amazing. I've had cucumber, passion fruit, mango, traditional. Okay, drop in some green around the edge. And then the edges of the bottom, we're kind of just going for keeping the middle open. By dropping it, I mean just tap your brush in there. All right, now what we'd like to do is outline the glass, all the areas in the outlines of the glass with a blue. So I have a phthalo blue, and I'm going to use that. I'm using a number 1 brush, really thin. Again, you want this kind of like ink, like an ink pen. I'm using blue because it's evoking to me like the blue Mexican glass in markets in San Antonio and markets down here. And then a couple areas you can add a little thicker, like I did at the bottom. And then we want to outline the stem. I haven't dipped my brush back in at all. I'm just using the same amount of blue that I had at the start, a little bit now. And let's get those shapes in there. And there's a couple of things you can do. We're not going for hyperrealism. This is just fun, but you can make it look a little bit more like a glass by doing an upside down U shape here at the top of the stem, and you can add a couple of lines of blue. We're just showing that there's some lighter and darker areas, and then a couple of curves where the stem is hitting the bottom rim of the glass. And then just a couple like ripples, almost like ripples in a pond we're adding. And then what I want to do is put clear water. So wash off your brush, dry it, add a little bit of clear water, and just to activate some of these areas and then blend them a little bit. When you were a kid, did you have those amazing books that had the paint infused in the paper and you just used a wet brush? Oh, it was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen in my life at the time. So if you're as old as me, you'd know. But if you're younger, you probably had all these electronics to deal with. But this is kind of reminding me of that, where there's paint already there, and then you're just activating it with the water. Okay, let's do that up there. I think we're pretty good now with the glass effect. That'll dry and look pretty good. We're gonna add white at the end, some white lines and white effects with the paint marker, and we'll do a little reflections in the glass too. Okay, a little bit darker green, but still with a yellow tone for sure. And let's add to the same areas we were darkening before. We're now on like our second layer or a medium layer. In watercolor, you're building the lights to darks. And the more washes and layers you have, the better, but you can't muddy them all up at the same time together. You have to add them one by one. It's glazing, similar technique to Renaissance artists using glazed oil paints to create really luminous skin color and stuff. We kind of do that in watercolor. Okay, darken. I'm going to leave the center areas lighter on the entire glass, the bottom and the middle. But not too dark yet. And I'm going to take that same color I had, a medium green, and I'm just going to blend it a little bit around the edge of the lime so there's not such a harsh edge there. And then a couple of the middle wedges. And then I feel like we've lost a little bit of the yellow. So same glaze idea. We're doing a really light wash of yellow in a couple of the lime wedges and then across the middle of the drink. And it's just giving a little yellow back where we had lost a little bit of yellow. Just warms it up in there. Gets that like traditional margarita mix look. I've seen enough of that in the last few days, I think. I think I'm going to cut myself off. But when you do stay at all inclusive, I have to say it's not really the strongest alcohol drinks. So I think I'm good. Okay, let's add some darker green to this mix, or more blue if you're making it with blue and yellow. And then same places, just darken the corners. We're just trying to get the idea that there's some heaviness or shading or just differentiation in the hue that we're using. Now let's mix up. You're going to ask me what on God's green earth we're doing here, but I am mixing up like a gray color because I want to have some contrast. We're gonna do salt around the rim of this. Make it super cute, but I want to have some contrast, so I'm adding a little bits of gray. We could have done blue too. I'm just doing gray. It's not pepper. We're not gonna leave it. But I'm just doing little tiny dots with my tiny #1 brush. Whatever paint size you're using, paint palette size, paper size, you might be using bigger. But I'm adding those in and letting them dry for a second before I add in my white paint marker dots for salt. They're just going to help set it off. So I let it dry about 3 minutes or so. Now I've got my famous white paint marker that I love. There's something I love about adding the opaque acrylic at the end because I started out painting acrylic. So this gives me a chance to kind of put some thicker paint on the end. Plus, I'm still early on my watercolor journey, so I don't always leave enough white space or really cool watercolory effects. I'm going to outline the inside of my lime wedge to make the rinds pop out a little bit more, the rind there. Then just random areas, I'm putting a little white down here around the bottom rim of the glass. Add some more salt. I'm going to put a few more highlights in. I'll add some highlights around the bottom. Maybe we'll do some circles similar to a pond, but around our drink inside. Maybe down the center. And then I'm just dabbing it off in case it looks too white to me. Then I'll just do a line of white down the middle of the stem and then randomly a couple circles around down here. And then maybe the edge, the outside edge of the glass, wherever you think it looks good. Just putting some here and there. I'm really not trying to be super realistic. I'm just trying to give it a more watercolor loose look by giving some definition, some breakup to the definition of it. You see, I keep just dabbing it with my finger. I just sometimes feel like the white might be too much, but I am a little bit obsessed with the white paint marker. You can use straight acrylic paint, gouache. You can use a chalk pencil white, anything you have. Oil, pastel maybe. Or if you have masking fluid, you can mask out these areas, little dots before you start. That is too much for me. That's too much patience to do all these little dots and then rub them off. And I kind of really like drawing with the pen, so that's what I'm doing. You can put some swirls around the background with white if you want. Go crazy. Guys, I wish you were here with me. This is my view off the balcony. Cheers to you. Subscribe for tons more watercolor adventures we're going to have in the new year. I hope you're enjoying this watercolor journey. I definitely am.